God, the referee. They're gonna stop this. They're gonna stop it.
Welcome to the mother relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. An ongoing situation that is still unfolding in the men's super middleweight division. David Morrell slams David Benavidez. Mexican monster. He's a fraud.
What?
He'd get his shoes taken in Cuba.
Aren't these guys supposed to be fighting?
They're supposed to be, but according to David Benavidez himself, they haven't actually agreed to terms.
Is that why David Morrell is going on the attack?
David Benavidez is a big bitch, said Morrell. His dad is a big fraud, always talking like he's some kind of tough guy, but he's just a small man with a little man complex. His brother wants to be a gangster who talks a lot of shit but got knocked out by Crawford and did a horrible job in the movie Creed. The Benavidezes are a bunch of cowards. This is the guy you call the quote-unquote Mexican monster. He's a fraud. This is the guy everyone is building up. I see a fat, insecure boy. That's what I see. Benavidez couldn't walk down any street in Cuba without getting his shoes taken. Funny he calls Canelo a duck. Who's the duck now? Morrell has been rising in the ranks and making a lot of noise at 168 pounds.
I take it that David Morrell's tirade is in reference to the fight with David Benavidez that may not be happening. According to David Benavidez via his own social media, him and David Morrell haven't actually agreed to terms, in spite of what Samson Lukowicz has been saying.
This is confusing.
It really is.
Listen,
Look.
right before the Caleb Plant fight, Samson Lukowicz said that David Morrell would be next immediately after that.
After the Plant fight.
I spoke to you maybe about a month and a half ago. You said that it was more likely that David Benavidez would fight David Morrell.
This interview by way of YSM Sports Media was right before the Caleb Plant fight. David and Caleb hadn't actually fought yet.
As opposed to Caleb Plant. So what kind of changed?
Because Morrell is mandatory. That was the reason. The WBA Monday is mandatory, so he did is mandatory, and that it delayed the whole thing. So you cannot fight every 2 months or 3 months.
So can we expect that in late 2023, early 2024?
We have a signed contract.
Did you hear that? This is before the Caleb Plant fight actually took place. And before the Caleb Plant fight, according to Samson Lukowicz, they already had a signed contract for a David Morrell fight.
Well, if that's true, then why is David Benavidez now saying that they haven't actually agreed to anything?
How do we go from Samson Lukowicz saying that that fight is already signed, it's already done, ahead of the Plant fight, to David Benavidez saying they haven't agreed to anything?
Why can't Team Benavidez get their stories straight?
Odds are they can't get their stories straight because somebody's lying.
And it's probably Samson.
So he will fight, and besides that,
I signed contracts that Morrell is after.
Morrell will fight Benavidez regardless.
Immediately after.
Hopefully, after, or if not, he will keep busy, but he's ready to fight because he won the fight. He's one of the fighters, Cuban fighters. He have no fear, and he make his decision that is the fight that he won. Now, Canelo, it could happen in September, and if Canelo doesn't take the fight and Benavidez win, so it'll be unification, because I'm pretty sure that the WC, it will strip Canelo. That is well deserved to get stripped.
So here you have Samson Lukowicz saying that the deal for the Benavidez versus Morrell fight was already done before the Caleb Plant fight, but he makes some mention of a Canelo Alvarez fight. Canelo in September.
Listen, that doesn't make sense. You can't sign a contract for a Morrell fight, then leave him in limbo.
If you actually did the deal, if you have a signed contract, like you said you had a signed contract, you're not at liberty to go into another fight. You're not at liberty to go into a fight with Canelo in September if you already did the deal for Morrell.
Right.
And according to Samson Lukowicz, before the Caleb Plant fight.
He literally said they have a signed contract.
Signed contract for the David Morrell fight. Now let's fast forward a couple of weeks.
Eddie Reynoso has come out saying that he has not received an offer from anybody, not PBC, not Matchroom, and not Top Rank. But you put out an email, a screenshot of an email that you did send them an offer. What's the situation with that?
Well, it's right. He didn't receive anything from PBC.
This interview conducted by Broadway Joel by way of his own channel here on YouTube.
Did you hear what Joel asked Samson Lukowicz, and did you hear what Samson said?
Samson basically admitted that when Eddie Reynoso said he did not receive an offer from the PBC, he admitted that Eddie was telling the truth, that the PBC didn't send Eddie Reynoso anything.
Play it back.
Eddie Reynoso has come out saying that he has not received an offer from anybody, not PBC, not Matchroom, and not Top Rank. But you put out an email, a screenshot of an email that you did send him an offer. What's the situation with that?
Well, it's right. He didn't receive anything from PBC.
Literally admitted. Eddie Reynoso was not sent an offer from the PBC.
Or maybe Mushroom, I don't know, or ESPN with Top Rank. But he did receive one from me.
So let's recap. Eddie Reynoso took to social media to state publicly that he was not sent an offer from either PBC, Top Rank, or Matchroom.
Right.
And Samson Lukowicz decided to respond by saying, that's not true. You were sent an offer.
Except that the offer wasn't from the PBC. The offer, at least according to Samson, was from him.
Samson Lukowicz himself.
Right.
The same Samson Lukowicz that before the Caleb Plant fight stated they already had a signed contract for a Morrell fight. A Morrell fight that David Benavidez is now saying isn't even agreed upon.
What do you say, to the critics saying, you guys only, negotiated for a week and he's the A side and you already had a fight with Morrell lined up and, all the stuff you see.
Yeah, no, there's no fight with Morrell lined up. I just seen that yesterday that supposedly they said I agreed to the fight. I'm like, man, I bet this is my first time seeing about it. We're not fighting Morrell. Everything that's been coming out that saying that we agreed to the fight. I haven't even seen anything. I didn't agree to anything.
Then what the hell does Samson mean they had a signed contract for that fight?
It's really not adding up, and with Team Benavidez, it never does. But at minimum, what we can see is that there may be trouble in paradise for what was supposed to be the Benavidez versus Morrell fight. And if he's not going to fight Morrell in the fall, who is he going to fight?
Jaime Munguia was very recently in action opposite the ring, Sergey Derevianchenko, and immediately after the fight, he was contacted by Jose Benavidez Sr.
Likely in reference to a fight, though that doesn't make a lot of sense when your son's promoter has been saying for months,
as far back as 2 months ago, as far back as 4 months ago, that David Benavidez would be fighting David Morrell.
But now David Benavidez says that's not the case?
Listen, here's what I think.
Because I can only tell you what I think, and if you want to know what I think, and you're here, so I'll assume that you do, these guys can't get their stories straight because they've been running a scam. They've been running a scam on the boxing community at large, trying to convince them that they really wanted Canelo Alvarez
by making him a proposal they only left on the table for approximately 5 days.
Except the proposal, at least according to Samson, it wasn't from Al Heyman and the PBC themselves, it was from Samson.
That's odd.
It was never their intention to get Canelo Alvarez in the ring. They're not serious about making the fight because David Benavidez is the WBC's interim champion, and he has yet to petition the WBC to order the fight.
They fed the boxing community empty promises about a David Morrell fight. A David Morrell fight they rushed to have, even though it's all the way out there in late October or early November.
Only so that David Benavidez, via his own social media, can say it's not true.
We're not fighting Morrell. Everything that's been coming out that saying that we agreed to the fight. I haven't even seen anything. I didn't agree to anything.
They haven't actually agreed to anything. So what exactly?
What are these guys doing?
You took the offer for Canelo off the table in less than a week because you wanted to move on.
Right.
You wanted to move on to a David Morrell fight, except now you're saying it's not happening, it's not even agreed upon. Then what has your promoter been talking about for the last 4 months?
What I've been telling you all along. These guys are a bunch of con men, and now it looks like they can't even deliver an in-house fight. A run-of-the-mill in-house fight with one of their PBC stablemates.
Why not?
I don't know. Maybe they're trying to get Jaime Munguia in the ring. Jose Benavidez Sr. did call him immediately after his fight with Sergey.
Yeah, he did, but the story on Jaime, at least according to International Boxing News, is that he may be facing John Ryder next. Charlie Sims has revealed that contact has been made to make a John Ryder versus Jaime Munguia fight next. Sims also mentioned they are keeping an eye on Edgar Berlanga over the weekend. It's a huge fight for both. A few thoughts. Jaime Munguia versus John Ryder is a fight that I mentioned in passing immediately after the Sergey Derevyanchenko fight on the premise that John Ryder had very recently fought in front of a rather large Mexican audience south of the border with Canelo, and how not quitting in front of that large audience, in spite of being dominated and being dropped 2 times, getting his nose broken, that actually endeared John Ryder to the Mexican fans.
Now, I'm not telling you they're hanging pictures of John Ryder above their dining room table. I'm just saying that if he were to fight another Mexican national, they'd at least now know who he is.
They know what he's made of. Opposite the ring, Jaime Munguia, who's no Canelo Alvarez. You could draw an audience with this fight. You could.
I think John might be receptive to it because he has to have seen how Jaime Munguia looked against Sergey Derevyanchenko.
If you're Jaime Munguia, you know John Ryder, that's low-hanging fruit because he's coming off of being dominated by Canelo Alvarez. So both guys have got an angle to play in making a fight with each other. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, well, where does that leave David Benavidez?
Nowhere.
Doesn't leave him anywhere. In spite of Jose Benavidez Sr.'s expressed interest in making a fight with Jaime.
Right now, we're trying to look. We want to make happen. We want to fight Jaime Munguia. Came up to 168. I think that would be a great fight. 2 big names.
These guys are on separate sides of the street. David fights on the PBC. Jaime's with Golden Boy.
Golden Boy ain't got the bodies to spare. Zurdo Ramirez got dominated by Dimitri Bivol, and his rebound fight got scrapped because he blew the weight. Ryan Garcia just got stopped.
They're in the process of suing him, and they're just trying to keep their heads above water at this point. I don't think they want to truck off another one of their star fighters to somebody else's platform.
With John Ryder, they don't have to.
John Ryder normally fights on the Matchroom and DAZN side of things, but Matchroom is not above loaning him out to another promoter, lest we forget. They loaned him out to Frank Warren. They loaned him out to Queensbury for the Zach Parker fight that John won.
I don't think they'd get in the way of a Munguia fight.
No, I don't think they'd stop him. If John really wanted that fight, I don't think Eddie Hearn and Matchroom would get in the way. And it's much easier to make a fight with John Ryder than making a fight with David Benavidez. It's going to become a promotional platform thing.
It's going to be a problem.
In an ideal world, Jaime Munguia versus David Benavidez as a fight could drum up serious business.
I think that could do upwards of 4, maybe even 500,000 pay-per-view buys at the box office, maybe more.
Maybe, if both promotional outfits and both respective platforms could set their differences aside and reach a deal that accommodates everyone.
But that's not realistic.
It's not.
Sooner expect Jaime Munguia to share the ring with John Ryder in his very next fight than David Benavidez. David has got enough damage control.
They've got to get in front of this David Morrell situation because David Morrell is exposing Team Benavidez as a whole.
Samson Lukowicz, as far back as the last 2 months, as far back as the last 4 months, has been making promises about a David Morrell fight just for his own fighter to say,
You know, we're not fighting Morrell. You know, everything has been coming out that saying that we agreed to the fight. I haven't even seen anything. I didn't agree to anything.
But they haven't agreed to anything. So if they haven't agreed to anything and that fight isn't happening, which fight is?
Why has Samson Lukowicz been lying about it all this time? Or is it that David Benavidez is the one out of the loop?
Maybe it's David Morrell. Maybe he's the one out of the loop, and maybe that's why he went into that tirade.
So being honest with you, a fight like that with a little-known Cuban fighter that only has 9 professional bouts is not supposed to be a difficult fight to put together. It's not supposed to be a difficult fight to make.
It's supposed to be an easy one.
If David Benavidez is every bit the draw that his father and his promoter make him out to be, then getting a guy like David Morrell in the ring shouldn't cost you nothing.
It's supposed to be easy, but it doesn't look like it is.
And you already had a fight with Morrell lined up, and you know all the stuff you see.
Yeah, no, there's no fight with Morrell lined up. I just seen that yesterday. That supposedly they said I agreed to the fight. I'm like, man, I bet this is my first time seeing about it. You know, we're not fighting Morrell. You know, everything has been coming out that saying that we agreed to the fight. I haven't even seen anything. I didn't agree to anything.
So here's a suggestion. If all this stuff we've been hearing from Samson Lukowicz about a Morrell fight being next in the fall isn't true, and you're holding out hope for a Munguia fight, but that's not likely, why not just move up and wait and take on Dimitri Bivol, who ain't got a dance partner right now? It was David Benavidez himself who said he'd knock that guy out.
What he said, those were his words.
I can almost see the David Benavidez faction of fans balling up their fists now. They get offended whenever you make that suggestion, that instead of fighting a little-known Cuban with only 9 fights, why don't you fight the guy that just beat the face of boxing in this country? Surely, fighting Dimitri Bivol at light heavyweight for a full-fledged WBA title would be better than fighting a little-known Cuban for a Reggie belt.
That fight won't move the needle.
Only really hardcore boxing fans even know who David Morrell is. I mean, if you didn't sell 200, 300, or 400,000 pay-per-view buys with Caleb Plant, you're not going to sell that with a less-known fighter in David Morrell, but with Dimitri Bivol.
David Benavidez' fans hate that suggestion. They love to tear down Canelo Alvarez, a naturally smaller fighter than David Benavidez, for losing to Dimitri Bivol at light heavyweight, his 4th weight class.
They love to tear down Canelo Alvarez for losing that fight, but they never once suggest that David Benavidez ought to go up there and show Canelo how it's done.
Yeah.
Show Dimitri Bivol what for. They hate that suggestion because they're afraid that David Benavidez ain't got what it takes, that as a light heavyweight, he won't have the advantages he has as a super middleweight, and that up there, he would get exposed.
They hate that idea.
Because they're a bunch of fucking pussies.
Pendejo.
They expect me and you to believe that Samson Lukowicz himself had something like, I don't know, $40-50 million or whatever it was for Canelo Alvarez. You wouldn't need to spend 40 or 50 million to get Dimitri Bivol in the ring. You could get him in the ring for much less than that. He doesn't have any mandatories to satisfy. He doesn't have a fight date booked. He's free.
No, I don't think Eddie Hearn or Matchroom would stop him from pursuing that fight.
I don't, because Eddie Hearn, outside of what was supposed to be the Canelo Alvarez rematch, he doesn't have all that much for Dimitri Bivol to do. So if the people at the PBC, or if Team Benavidez really wanted to get Dimitri Bivol in the ring on their side of things, I think they could if they wanted to.
But they don't.
It's all right to make the fans empty promises, make the fighter empty threats about how you'd knock him out, but when push comes to shove, you won't lift a finger to get that guy in the ring.
Your fans are a bunch of scared pussies.
Pussies scared out of their mind that should David Benavidez venture north of super middleweight, he won't be able to stay in character. The same people that expect me and you to believe that Samson had $40 to $50 million for Canelo, just take some of that money, offer it to Dimitri, and make a fight.
What are you waiting for?
I mean, aren't you always hearing fight fans talk about how they want to see the best fighters versus the best fighters? Well, Dimitri Bivol proved that he was a better fighter than Canelo Alvarez when they fought, at least at light heavyweight he is. So why not have David go up there? He's more adequately suited to campaign as a light heavyweight than Canelo. Canelo stands in at approximately 5'7" if he isn't 5'8". David is 6'2".
He's got a bigger frame than Canelo Alvarez. You hear it all the time, how he's too big for Canelo, too strong for Canelo. Is he too big and too strong for Dimitri?
You guys are too pussified to find out when that's the obvious choice. That's the obvious suggestion. You can't get Canelo and you don't want Morrell.
You're not going to get Jaime.
If I go with the Benavidez version of the story and it's Canelo that doesn't want the fight, then go after the man that beat him.
Shouldn't be that hard. You've got the money, don't you?
You had it for Canelo Alvarez. Where'd it go?
It's gone.